So now we have officially opened ENISE. We're going to start with the first module or roundtable, and on challenges of cybersecurity in Spain. It will be chaired by Joaquín Castellón, who's the operational director of the National Security Department. Joaquín, you have the floor. We're sorry, but the microphone is not working, so we cannot interpret. We apologize.
A ver, ahora, ¿no?
So now it's on? Yes? Okay. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank, on behalf of the National Security Department of the Spanish government, I'd like to thank the Cybersecurity National Institute and its director, Alberto Hernández, for having invited us to take part in this meeting. And it's a great pleasure for me to be here with you in León, with my colleagues, the round table, but there's no table. And I am very happy to be with the crème de la crème of cybersecurity in Spain. The title of this roundtable is Challenges of Cybersecurity in Spain, and the speakers will have 5 minutes approximately. That's what the organizers have asked us to do, to share their points of view about the challenges for the future. They've asked me to do a brief introduction, and I will do that. I will speak about the future challenges that we have to face from the point of view of the National Security Department. And I have to say in advance that I'm in agreement with what they're going to share, I'm sure. I think there's a constant challenge now. We have to continue the path we started. In 2013, we had a national strategy, and one of the priorities was cybersecurity. According to the National Security Council, we had that strategy. Then we created a Council for Cybersecurity and an action plan for cybersecurity in Spain. So we started walking, and the first challenge is to continue on that path. Then also we have to look at what the European Union has been doing. There's a challenge that is to have the ENISE directive and the next conference on cybersecurity. And another challenge is to adapt to governance that is developing around cybersecurity in Europe. Another important detail for us, and of course I have to speak about our perspective, is crisis management. This year we foresee a national security strategy to be passed where crisis management will be a real concern. If cybersecurity is one of the areas in which we may have crises of different kinds, the strategy includes two important aspects that are happening now. One is post-truth, that is cyberspace being used through connectivity to convey false or bogus news and ideas that have an important impact on society. And then we have a hybrid conflict that happens in cyberspace, or at least it's one of its most important areas, and we're seeing this every day. And that is the line between a normal situation and a crisis will be blurred and will be thinner, and cyberspace will play a role in all that. And we also have to continue improving our crisis management and prevention. Prevention is there already whenever we get an alarm. And whenever we have an event challenging security, the first code is not to share information because, for example, this is the 11th of September. One of the problems was that there was no information being shared by the different agencies. So this is a challenge in the US, in Europe, everywhere, to share information timely. Another challenge that we see from the point of view of the National Security Department is to continue growing in governance of cybersecurity. We have the National Cybersecurity Council, and we established the need to have an authority for cybersecurity and an agency. An agency can be developed in different ways, but we speak about an agency to summarize it. This can be present in an organization that already exists, but it has to be an umbrella organization to help us improve coordination, to have a proper direction and management of cybersecurity in Spain, better cooperation with the private sector as well, and higher international connectivity. And finally, because I see that my time is almost up, a last aspect, this is a topic that we all understand, is a cybersecurity culture. We need to make more efforts to increase from our side, from the administration, you and your companies, with citizens, we have to increase awareness about cybersecurity. As you know, cybersecurity is a problem that we will be facing on a day-to-day basis in all spheres, and we really need to have everybody together, everybody understanding the importance of cybersecurity. And without any further ado, I'll give the floor to the first speaker. According to the program, I think this is Ángel Agreda from the Defense Ministry. Ángel, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Joaquín. I'd like to thank INCIBE, Alberto Hernandez, for the invitation to the Ministry of Defense and to myself to participate here. It's a privilege to be with the remainder of the speakers. In a nutshell, I believe that in reality we all have similar problems, perhaps qualified by the characteristics of our different organizations, our different institutions. Joaquín, the director, was speaking about the need to raise awareness. The Ministry of Defense, probably due to the hierarchy it has in its structure, may have progressed much in the field of awareness, and it's probably much easier for the culture of cybersecurity to reach each and every one of its components. However, on the other hand, this vertical, strict hierarchy, on the other hand, may prevent in many companies for the cybersecurity culture to permeate to the organizational levels of the company, to the institution itself. In other words, it's not enough to have a joint command for cyber defense with the excellence in cybersecurity regarding the staff, the training, the awareness, but that each one of the sections, each one of the divisions in our enterprises, or in this case in the Ministry of Defense, to have instilled the concept of cybersecurity in day-to-day work. It's not enough with having a group, an elite group, who is in charge of doing the offensive or the more technical tasks, but the entire organization has to be aligned and involved or engaged. In this sense, I believe we're doing the right thing. In fact, tying into what Joaquín says, and with regards to post-truth, we are living times in which conflicts are no longer basically military. We're speaking of hybrid wars in which we are also including nuances that are political, diplomatical, economic, of many kinds, and therefore the part that pertains to defense must be integrated with the greater effort of the state or the greater effort of all the institutions and all the businesses in order precisely to foster good governance. The transposition of the European directive coming from the EU leaves to the side the defense part, as it was something on the side. So we might be losing out there. We might be missing the chance of joining efforts and of joining together in the construction of cybersecurity at the national level and also at the global level. Let us not forget that this is an artificial environment in which governance has to be designed by ourselves. So the basic factor that this scenario has continues to be the people. That is where we see an initiative, a pending initiative, which is that of establishing some sort of reserve of talent in which we can do what we're doing here, which is to get to know one another, to know with whom we can count on, and to know who does what in order to all together build this cybersecurity. The talent reserve in the cyber world would be something that would benefit us all, because one of the challenges we all have now is the management and retention of talent in our companies, in our systems and institutions. And finally, such talent has to be capable of generating R&D and also of generating knowledge which may contribute singleness and distinction to our institutions and to put us ahead of the front line of all the countries. It's the only way of making sure that we are building security for us, but also a productive fabric around cybersecurity. So basically speaking, the three major challenges would be the permeabilization or the permeation, the fact that cybersecurity has to permeate to all the organizations, the talent management and innovation in the field of cybersecurity as the three focuses on which defense would be working hardest. Thank you very much, Ángel. I'll give the floor to Javier Candau from the National Technological Center. Thank you very much. Thank you, INCIBE, for having invited us to share our ideas. I'll give you an idea of the challenges for cybersecurity in Spain. From the viewpoint of CCN, the cybersecurity challenges are mostly recorded in the 2013 National Cybersecurity Strategy. I have capitalized the things that we are most concerned about, and I'll focus on the first two: detection, response, and recovery, and of course, public administrations. We do have. Sorry, the sound's gone. Then some ideas about cybercrime and critical infrastructures. Then the other part that depends on the Ministry of Industry and Digital Agenda, that's the private sector. This other is all for us: knowledge, competencies, training and talent. Then we have another two cross-cutting issues, which are exchange and development of national products, R&D and I, that ought to bring us all together and sets the objectives. Focus on the first two ones, detection and exchange. I believe that's the key word, which is something that our national security scheme has not aligned properly, is the surveillance capacity. Here are some of the systems used by the CN, but all organizations and private companies must launch initiatives to improve their detection capacities. The second point is cooperation and exchange. Here, under an initiative that we are developing from all the sectors, it's the CSIRT groups, with which we would like to establish a platform to exchange and collaborate in order for us all together somehow be able to face crises and challenges such as those mentioned by Joaquín in the beginning. There are other initiatives that I will not explain, And now going down to the level of public administrations, what is the first challenge? The first challenge is to implement the national security scheme, which has 75 measures. If we were to apply them to the entire public sector, then we will gain a lot in cybersecurity. We're going to gain and turn the targets that are easy to attack into targets that are easy to defend. The second point in the strategy is related to cybersecurity, but basically it's an issue of efficiency to use horizontal services, to use the SARA network, to use common exits to internet. All these issues are at the core, and we ought to have them very much in mind. Then we have the last point in the second rectangle. We have to have safe services or horizontal services that are secure. In this sense, the Ministry of Public Function and the CCN are working together. Finally, network. It's not just a question of implementing it. There is a key core issue. We have to have proper audits or examinations. We have to achieve what in the National Strategic Plan is determined as some sort of certification labels. This is by a public or private independent entity that have the capacity to conduct such audits. They should conduct such an audit and determine whether the security measures that we have implemented are such as we need, or do we need any other. As a conclusion, let's implement some safety or security standards. There are quite a few of them out there. Whichever standard is valid, let us at least implement one. Here you can see that there is a 70% of security measures that are the same from one to the other. But the difference between the two of them is a little that the NS is mandatory and it covers more issues. Second point, to detect. We're going to increase the surveillance capacity. Here you have some statistics. Last year in December, 5% of the attacks came from Lucia, and now it's down to 2%. If you go to the statistics, the organizations are developing capacity to detect, because this strategy that you have down there are incidents reported by the organizations. We're going to have to work harder in this respect in order for the detection capacity to be complete. And finally, to face the attack, to prepare for the attack, to be defensive. If we can have the last slide, please. To be there before the hack, we have to cover the four vertices on the diamond diagram. First, we have to have infrastructures and capacities that, using the tool Reyes, and information we provide to the community. And on the defense side, the victim has to report all the attacks, and we achieve this through Lucia. Thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias, Javier.
Thank you very much, Javier. We'll give the floor now to José Ignacio Carabias from the National Center of Critical Infrastructure Protection. Good morning. I'd like to thank the organization of ENISE for counting once again on my institutions. I'm the head of operations of the National Center for the Protection of Critical Infrastructures, which belongs to the Ministry of the Interior, the Home Office. In my 5 minutes, I'd like to explain how the ministry is working on the field of cybersecurity protection. This scope is a strategic line for the ministry. We are aware that we are facing a series of threats, more and more evolved. For instance, this year, as you may know, there was an attack with ransomware, the WannaCry and Petya, and there was the use of malware, and in this case, that of the WannaCry, it affected more than 150 countries, more than 200,000 individuals. In the case of Petya, which is an evolved version of WannaCry, with a more specific implementation, it has affected countries such as the Ukraine. This type of threat has existed for some time now, and it's used especially in cyberspace. In the scope of cybersecurity, it's important to use ICTs to commit the crime, or the ICTs themselves as the target of crime, especially when they are critical infrastructures. In this case, fighting against cyber delinquency, cyber terrorism, or cyber harassment, or any other crimes against sexual freedom. In 2017, it has become patent that private data are being stolen. This is a good old phishing. Yahoo has had more than 300 million accounts affected. We have to also bear these things in mind. And in this day and age of technology, with so much progress in telecommunications and ICTs, attacks from the Internet of Things by denial of service, etc. There are more and more smart devices that connect to the Internet, and this is an environment in which we make progress in improving the services provided to citizens, but then on the other hand, it becomes a vulnerable platform for cyber attacks. In the scope of critical infrastructures, we have seen that there has been an evolution in this type of actions. In 2015, 134 cyber incidents have been handled. The targets were critical infrastructures or operators. In 2017, this figure has increased to more than 479, and so far this year we are around 600 plus. So there is a clear trend here. From the Ministry of the Interior, and more specifically, cybersecurity is considered to be something very important, and so the Minister himself has identified several of the critical threats in which we have to win the battle, and cybersecurity is going to be the key to see who's going to win the battles of the immediate future. In this case, at the core of the Ministry of Interior, in its organic structure, a new law was passed in June to see whether the organic structure is adapted to the presence of cyber attacks. Cybersecurity is considered to be of the essence, and there is a department at the ministry that coordinates all the cybersecurity policies at the ministry. In the case of my organization, we have changed our name. We used to be the National Center for the Protection of Critical Infrastructures, and now we are the National Center for the Protection of Infrastructures and Cybersecurity. In the field of defense and police forces, we have also established a new organic structure to adapt to which, in the scope of the police, there is a department of research and cyber delinquency, and also a command for research and cyber delinquency at the different police departments. This determines how important this threat is in cybersecurity, and I believe that cooperation among all the public and private stakeholders will be the only way to win against this kind of threats. Thank you very much, José Ignacio. I'll give the floor now to Marcos Gómez from the National Institute of Cybersecurity. Thank you. Good morning for your introduction. I shall add to the challenges and the current situation that my colleagues have described. On our behalf, and regarding the information that INCIBE has from our centers of analysis and research, I will approach the current situation from the viewpoint, from a pragmatic viewpoint. Cyber attacks, cyber threats, or cyber risk on the internet we are mostly focusing on phishing, on information phishing, because the data are either misused or they are sold for further fraud or scams or whatever. Another kind of theft is that of money or goods and services, not only identities. This is stolen from large financial entities, but also from private individuals and companies. These are micro thefts via ransomware in some cases. This is on the rise recently. do the most of vulnerable spots, and also through a lot of engineering. And as José Ignacio said, we have attacks to critical infrastructures, which are very important, that they may be supporting essential services. These are the target for many cyber attacks, for cyber terrorists especially. We've had some cases which have been serious. And, importantly, recently, the hacktivist attacks, in which any public or private institution may become the target of a denial of service or identity theft, or generating affectionate currents to harm the image or assets of the organizations. Recently, we've had the OP Catalonia operation, which has been very active this weekend and has kept us very busy, with more than 25 to 30 public entities which have been the target of these cyber attacks. According to the figures of INCIBE, adding to what Javier and others have said, in INCIBE we have more than 108,000 incidents of cybersecurity recorded, managed and resolved. Compared to the year before, we're speaking of 19,000, so we've had 18,000 more, which means an important increase of threats. There is a similar increase to that which has been experienced in public administration. More and more citizens and enterprises have become more aware of cyber attacks, and they contact us to treat their cases. But it's also due to the fact that year after year, from the administration, we are investing a lot of money and a lot of effort in increasing detection and prevention capacity before these cyber attacks. So we know what's happening before it happens, or at least in real time. And focusing on the challenges, I'll be very pragmatic. Some have been mentioned. They are very important and also worded into the current cyber security strategy. Detection, prevention and protection means understanding the enemy better. They are coming to our systems, but it's also what is often called the insiders who also know how we operate. Joaquín said at the beginning of his presentation, we have to invest more on training at all levels, starting with raising awareness, but also making an effort not only to catch talent and use it properly, but also to train our employees, our users, our suppliers in advanced issues also. And also to implement experiences such as cyber exercises, where all the skills are tested, such as cyber resilience, or a resistance against a social engineering attack, or a production or simulated environment. These are all good experiences to draw interesting conclusions. This adds on to what we understand to be a critical point or a critical challenge, which is to better work on several alternative plans. We have to have probably recovery plans. But it's not only a question of having the plans, it's a question of testing them. So threats like Petya or WannaCry, or what happened last weekend with the hacktivists, help public and private organizations to understand that these business continuity plans are operational and successful. We have to also improve trust relationships. This has been created under the NIS directive. There is a network to share information, and we are discussing which tools are going to be the best to this purpose, to get to know what's happening and to get to know our enemy better. A lot has been said of best practices. The National Scheme for Public Administration has been mentioned. There are other experiences from the private sector for critical operators, from the CNPIC and the Ministry of the Interior, which plans were published last year in December, and they have a full pack and a toolkit for risk analysis and how to better confront hackers. And finally, we believe it's important to be up to date. Up to date means not only looking at open sources, but also private sources, share any relevant information to get to better know the modus operandi of cyber attackers. Thank you very much, Marcos, and everybody else.
So now we'll open the floor for a discussion. I think that we had some 25 minutes, if I'm not wrong. Excuse me? 10 minutes? Yeah? Okay. So if you have any questions, we'll be pleased to answer, at least try.
Hola. Sí, yo tengo una pregunta. La verdad es que he estado
Good morning. I have a question.
tentado de no hacerla porque
I was a bit reluctant to ask because that may be a bit controversial. My name is Ignacio Matos.
creo que os ha faltado uno de los retos.
I think that one of the most important challenges we're facing has not been addressed.
Yo no sé en la empresa privada los cargos
I do not know in private companies for cybersecurity. I am not concerned about what kind of position these people have and how much money they get. But in other administrations, I'm not going to speak about salaries because they're so low. That's terrible. And I am working in the INCIBE, but I am a systems official, and I have never been related to cybersecurity. And the same thing the same thing applies to many public officers who are working in cybersecurity, but we're never named, and even our positions do not indicate that we are engaging in cybersecurity. So I do not know, unless we're speaking about a large ministry, we do not have specific positions for cybersecurity. So we are doing the job, because if we didn't, I do not think that you could discuss what you're discussing. And over the weekend, we saw how we were avoiding denial of service attacks. And we were there during the weekend when something happened. And I'm not just thinking about the salaries. I think that in the public administration, they don't even consider that they will have to have a structure of positions for cybersecurity. We don't have that today. And I think this is another challenge, because in the end, people get discouraged. And that's my question. I'd like to know your opinions about this. I'm not sure whether this relates to what you were discussing, but I think this is a challenge, at least in the public administration. Thank you very much for your question. Javier, maybe you can say something. Regarding Antonio Grimalto's question, unfortunately, and I have to agree with you, the RPT and the organization structure, we do not have profiles for cybersecurity. We're working with the public administration office, but we do have the duty to have a responsible person in cybersecurity. And the security officer, you can is a position we have, and you can add to your card that you are responsible for cybersecurity. This is, in a way, that's how we work in the public administration. Yes, I think this is clear. And as Javier said, the national security scheme is trying to organize these things. But it is true that cybersecurity is something new. And in many things, we do not have the nomenclature. But we have to think about that, and we're working on it. And we'll have to see what ministries we're talking about, because in some agencies we do have, for example, information security, or some general designations that are not, or some designations that are not as generic as yours. I'd like to say that from the point of view of critical infrastructure protection, both in the public and private sphere, the operator who is a critical operator, we tell them to identify a person who has to be the spokesperson for cybersecurity. So they have to designate a liaison officer, And we also need to have a CISO and for topics that have to do with cybersecurity. In our plan for the protection of critical infrastructure, we have a coordination panel where we have the 12 strategic sectors, and there is a representative for each of the sectors. And then we also have a panel for cybersecurity, where we have the CISO who have been chosen for each of the sectors. And I think that the structures in the public administration will have to adapt to this. And as Javier was saying, we will have to have proper designations and reference persons for topics that have to do with security and cybersecurity as such. Yes, the concept is clear. Both the PIC Act and the National Security Scheme and the adaptation of the data protection law with the DPD or DPO, then that's clear. But the designation is clear. I'm not complaining about this. I go to work every day and I smile because I love my job. This is not because of the designation, but I think that all this is very ethereal. So you are the CISO, but if we have a designation that's not official, and the problem is not how you're registered, but I do think that we need to have the administration has to be aware of the fact that we need this. It needs to create a structure. We have a body of inspectors for the state, or computer, what is it? Computer management systems for the state. But people who are in cybersecurity, they need the support of the administration. And the answer you have given is right. We have the National Security Scheme, that we need to have an officer for that. And the Data Protection Act, it also says that we have to have a person responsible for the file, etc. But is there any other questions? Then maybe, yeah, but I think that the administration hasn't taken this seriously. Thank you. Okay, just to summarize, I think everything goes together. We have all spoken about awareness, and all of us in companies, we have to think about the designations, because this is not something isolated. This is part of the work that we have to do. And I think that all of us, we're making an effort, in everyone in their own area, and this is translated into different aspects. For example, the designations, but not the biggest thing. This is, once we have this awareness, then everything will be more logical, and we will make it better. Yes, you're right. But what happens is that the public administration is an elephant. And until we have specific profiles within the IT body of public servants, then we will need some time to have that, but we're working on it. Okay, our time is up. Thank you very much for your attention, and see you next time. Thank you. Okay, if you have any questions, please be brief so that we have time for more participants to take the floor. Thank you. Thank you very much, Joaquín, and members of the panel. Now we will be showing you a video that's a summary of the 10th ENISE conference.
celebrando 10 años de historia, mirando al futuro porque nos queda mucho por hacer.
El afán de búsqueda de colaboración y de cooperación en el ámbito nacional e internacional que tiene el Instituto Nacional de Ciberseguridad de alguna forma se materializa en la mesa de inauguración que hemos tenido en esta ocasión con 3 secretarías de Estado que trabajan conjuntamente en una acción común para el desarrollo de la ciberseguridad en España y la propia secretaria ejecutiva del CICE.